There's no question in my mind. I'm not doing that whole like, ooh, what's like, is that something I'm seeing? I'm like, there's something over there. Like it's there. I can see it. I don't really need to like question it. It's there. I see it.
Welcome back to a very overdue episode of Hey That's Weird. I won't get into why the episode's a week late. Let's just say real life got a little bit weird. But I do apologize, and I hope it's worth the wait for you guys. Apologies also to those who have submitted stories or sent me a message and have been waiting on a response. I'll be working through all that this week. A big extended thanks to ZootSuit89, Kaya, Club Turbo, and Corey for their feedback on the previous episodes. Today's guest is Joshua from California. It was such a joy talking to Josh, and honestly, I found it hard to edit his story down to the usual 20-minute episode time. So please settle in, grab a snack, a cup of tea, and enjoy this week's longer than usual episode. Without further ado, Joshua, let's get weird.
My name is Joshua, and I grew up in the beautiful great northern state of Maine. Growing up in Maine was the greatest. Like it's a genuinely a magical place. I can't really think of a better place to like be a kid and to grow up. With that said, there's not really, a ton of change taking place in Maine, and there's not a lot of opportunity for like massive growth in your life there. So, Maine as a whole has this issue of like, it's very difficult to retain its young people once, you kind of graduate high school. So I did that whole thing. I graduated high school and I went off to college and was not prepared. I barely made it through high school, so I don't know why I thought that college was a great idea, but no shame in my game at all. I left school and I went from Maine straight to Cincinnati, and then I left Cincinnati and I ended up in Florida. That was great. I was like, oh, okay, I'm in a city now. I'm in a warm, fun, exciting place. There's stuff going on, and great music scene and this, that, whatever. And being college aged, all of my homies were still in college. So, I was like, oh, okay, this works out. And it turned out that, a good handful of my friends were in various colleges in Tampa, in the Tampa Bay area. And so that was great. I was super isolated in college, and so I was basically on my own. Was it the most recent episode? She was a funeral director. I loved that episode because I take a lot of flack. I speak to decedents. She was talking about, saying goodnight at night and addressing people and speaking to them about their families. And like, that's so much of how I am with decedents, and a lot of the people that I work with are like, dude, come on, like, whatever. Her talking about that in her episode was really so validating, because I don't know that that's like extraordinarily common necessarily. There's a division amongst the types of people that do that within death care. So I loved her episode. I thought it was really great. But yeah, I have a long, essentially a half my life spanning career in death care. I went to mortuary school 2 weeks out of high school. I graduated high school and I was like, I'm going to be a funeral director. That for me personally, I went to mortuary school in Cincinnati and I got an apprenticeship over the phone. So I graduated high school. 2 weeks later, I moved to Cincinnati and I moved into a funeral home. And I was the apprentice. So as soon as I started mortuary school, and I'm still like doing like prerequisite courses. I'm not, embalming or anything, but I'm living and working in the funeral home. So I'm assisting and I'm witnessing embalmings and I'm doing removals, going to pick up decedents. And it was just like straight up immediately into full on funeral life. I always describe that career, if you will, in air quotes, as a lifestyle and not so much as a job. You do a year and you see 300 deceased people come through the funeral home, and I just had flat midlife crisis at like 19. I was done. I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna die. Oh my God. Why did nobody tell me this? But I went to mortuary school too early, too soon. You know, I was too young, and so I didn't have the foundation of life to get me through death as a constant yet. I left mortuary school, you know, pretty quickly, which is not uncommon. I think the majority of mortuary school classes cut in half, basically, because it's extremely strenuous, very demanding, and you find out, you know, if you're really cut for it. And what I did learn in that process was that I was cut for death care. I just was not ready for mortuary school. So I stayed in the business, essentially, in various capacities. And, you know, I worked in funeral homes and, you know, doing different stuff. But essentially I found that I loved doing removals. That was something that I felt gave me purpose, and I felt was important. And I felt that it was a really, like, respectful and dignified job. A removal is picking up a decedent from their place of death or wherever they may be and transferring them to the mortuary, or sometimes you're taking them to the coroner or to the crematorium, wherever they need to go. So removal is sort of the blanket term of taking a decedent into your care and into your custody and transporting them to wherever it is that they might be going. Moving to Florida was awesome. It like brought my social life back into play. And a buddy of mine that I used to hang out with a lot back home in Maine was living in St. Pete at the time, you know, basically just right across the bay from Clearwater, where I was living in the Tampa Bay area. So that was awesome. You know, we started hanging out a bunch, and we had a few other buddies around, and my friend lived in this great apartment with his partner at the time. And it's this really cool place in St. Pete. It was just this little ground floor basement apartment. Maybe there was another apartment next to it, and there were a couple apartments upstairs, but it had a sliding glass back door that stepped out onto the lawn, and then it was right up against the water. And so it was like this really beautiful place. And being young and stupid, and really basically time is not of like a massive concern and or a massive value. So, you know, there were plenty of beers and you know, a couple, you know, 2-3 joints or whatever, you know, by the water as the sun sets, you know, as you do. Great place to hang. And so we used to hang there a lot. Just a beautiful setting to just shoot the shit, basically. We spent a lot of time hanging there, and you know, the vibe was always really nice, and I enjoyed hanging there and never really had any two thoughts about it. Maybe I had hung out there, we'll say 10 times, whatever. I'd been there pretty frequently. You know, I was over there one night, and we were just kind of hanging around, and I ended up staying the night. I had a few drinks, and he was like, oh, you know, you can crash on the couch, you know, no big deal. It's like, all right, cool, you know. So we hung out, and we hung out till late. You know, I hate on podcasts when, you know, they're like, this is the exact layout of the home, because it's not typically pertinent information. However, and they always say this, right? But in this particular case, the layout is moderately important to the story. So the back wall had a sliding glass door that overlooked the backyard, which was, you just walked right out to the backyard. And that was in the living room. And so to the right, if you're facing the sliding glass door, there was a TV, and across from the sliding glass door, the back wall had a couch. And from that couch, you could look at the glass door, and then to the left, there was sort of a like dining room nook, essentially. And then there was a half wall, and the kitchen was on the left of that. So small apartment, everything is all kind of right here. And so I'm sleeping on the couch. I'm kind of a late night guy. I'm not super into sleeping. I kind of struggle in that department. So, you know, everybody had gone to bed, and I was on my own, and I was watching TV, and my friends had this really great little cat, this little kitten. You know, kittens are terrorists by nature. that grow into full-blown, assault on your life. Apex predators, which is awesome. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think cats are really amazing, and, I know absolutely nothing about, the actual, maybe spiritual implications of cathood. I grew up with a cat. I was very fortunate to do so, and she always struck me as like an ethereal being, so I kind of have this like, all right, cats, maybe they're in the in-between, So they have this lovely little cat, and the cat's just kind of an insane person. And the cat kind of had this tendency to do this thing where it was like, it would be on its own, you wouldn't necessarily be able to see it, but you'd hear it, and you'd hear it playing around, and, it's a kitten, so in my mind, I'm like, kittens are energetic creatures, they play, they don't need to be entertained, they're gonna have fun. So I'm laying on the couch and I'm kind of hanging out and the TV is on, and I decide like, okay, like I need to go to sleep, like I'm tired. I shut the TV off, and the cat, as I'm falling asleep, is on the couch with me. And so I'm like, oh, this is the greatest. Like, this is so cool. Oh, the cat likes me. I love the cat. Like, everything, I feel like if a cat likes you, you're probably all right. So I drift off to sleep. I'm very comfortable. I'm in a place that I'm familiar with. My friends are around. I got a furry friend. Like, I'm cool. I couldn't exactly tell you, how long it was, but I wake up to the feeling of the cat walking on the blanket. So the blanket is draped over me and then hanging off the front of the couch and onto the floor. And so it feels like the cat is walking on the floor, but on the blanket. So I'm just kind of feeling like tugging. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, like that's annoying, but whatever. It's cat stuff. On the sliding glass door, which is, we'll say it's 10 feet away, the sliding glass door has that classic like slatted plastic shade. You can spin the thing and it twists open, and you spin it closed, but then you can slide it. And I'm looking down, I'm trying to see the cat, and as I'm doing so, I see I can hear, really, even before I see it, because I'm looking down, I hear the slats on the sliding glass door kind of shaking, like they're being moved, all right? Not like scraped on, but it sounded like the cat was walking through them. And so now I'm confused. Now I'm kind of, what is going on here? And I sit up to try to look and see, like, well, I'm having two different experiences here that in my mind can only be explained by one thing, right? By the cat. Otherwise, I don't know what's going on. So I look and I can see the cat, and the cat is over by the sliding glass door, and the cat is walking in and out, like in between the slats of the sliding glass door, which is very strange. It's very confusing. But I'm like, okay, like, fucking cat, like, come on, man. We were hanging out, we were cool, I was sleeping, and so I kind of forgotten about me thinking that the cat was pulling at the blanket. I lay back down, I try to go back to sleep, and I'm on the couch, and the cat's fucked off to wherever cats go when they're bothering someone else that's not you. And so I'm settled in to go back to sleep, and I feel the cat jump up in between my legs onto the blanket. And so I sit up again, and the cat's not there. So now I'm sitting up, and I'm like, okay, I felt that I was being teased, that I was being played with, sort of, there were all these like small, kind of perceptible, like, sensory things going on. I'm hearing little noises around me, and I've got little tugs on the blanket, but all stuff that's like very easily like, okay, this cat's messing with me. But now the cat's gone. Now I can't see the cat. And so I'm having actual confusion. I'm startled now because I felt something, about cat weight jump into my legs, but I can't explain what it is. And so now I'm kind of on alert, and I'm fully sitting up now on the couch. I'm looking around, and the cat comes back into the room. So now I know that the cat had not jumped into my lap, because the cat comes from down the hallway, and I'm like, all right, I'm spooked now. I'm kind of catching a vibe of like I'm something feels like it's up. So the cat comes back into the room, and the cat is like jumping up and down, paws up in the air. Cats play. Again, this is not some mysterious, insane thing, but the vibe was that the cat was being played with. Just the way it was moving, it was like the cat is playing with someone. This is a little bit strange. Something feels like it's kind of up. can the cat see something that I can't see? Is there someone around? What is going on here? I'm just wrought with confusion at this point because I'm like, something was in my lap, something was going on, and so I can see the cat, and the cat looks like it's playing, and then I hear the blinds again. What is going on here? Now I can see the cat. The cat is not in the blinds, but the blinds look like they're parting. Very strange, like someone's rubbing them down the length from one end to the other, and they make that really weird plasticky noise. It's like, you know exactly what this noise is when you hear it, right? I'm genuinely confused, but I'm a little scared. I feel again like I'm truly being messed with. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Something's happening, and I'm confused. So at this point, I'm like scanning the room. I'm looking around. I'm really trying to like figure out what's going on here. There's no lights in the room, like, it's I can see because I've been sleeping, so I'm adjusted, but there's no like, real strong ambient light or anything. But I'm looking around and I'm scanning the room, and when I turn to the left and look into the dining room, I see just beyond the other side of the table, I see like a shadow, and it's dark. I'm not getting like dark vibe from it, but I see a spot that is physically darker than the rest of the room. It looks like a shadow in the dark. There's no question in my mind. I'm not doing that whole like, ooh, what's like, is that something I'm seeing? I'm like, fuck, there's something over there. Like, it's there. I can see it. I don't really need to like question it. It's there. I see it. I'm real spooked by this thing. So I'm sitting up, and I've had some experiences in the past, and I consider myself fairly logical when it comes to these things. I'm certainly not a hardcore skeptic, mostly just because of the things that I have experienced in my life, but I'm not seeking things out. I'm not asking for these things. I'm not searching them out. I'm not looking for experiences, right? All the experiences I've ever had have been sort of like, oh wow, that was very odd. What a strange circumstance. I guess it's one of those things, like when you talk to people, or in my experience, when I've spoken to people who have experienced things, I've never been in a position where I'm looking for validation on whether or not it happened, because it happened. Like, it happened to me. I've never left one of those experiences being like, did that happen? It's like, oh wow, that strange thing just took place. What it was, what I believe it to be is the other thing, but like, I just had this experience and it was very odd. And so I'm having that moment where I'm not like, is that there? I'm like, what the fuck is that thing in the corner? And so I see this shadow, but I can't see any like discernible feature. But it's certainly person shaped. However, it's child sized. It's about child height. It wasn't all that much taller than the dining room table, which is sort of a strange metric. But it certainly wasn't like, it wasn't, the 7-foot slender man in the corner or anything. It was about kid-sized. I'd say if I saw a 12-year-old standing across the room, this is what I would expect to see, essentially. So I'm really like hard scrutinizing this thing, and the cat's like kind of running at me, and like, it's like the cat could feel that I was afraid, or that I was having like strong discomfort, and the cat was like leaning into it, and I was just like, what? I really was having like palpable energetic confusion of just like, I am confused. I don't know what's happening here, but I feel off kilter. And so I'm seeing this thing in the corner, and I'm looking at it, and the cat is in the living room, messing around in front of me, and I turn my head to the cat and away from the thing in the corner, and as I'm looking at the cat, I see out of the corner of my eye like a very small ball of light, and it comes from that corner and it swings around, and I see it in my left peripheral vision, and as I turn my head, it hits me in the cheek, and it was warm. It was one of the strangest things I have ever experienced in my life. To this day, I have never, ever come even close to having something like touch me, or having balls of light fly at me, I guess, for that matter. I really have no other marker for this experience, but it really was. It was like this just very small, warm on the color spectrum, physical warm colored light. And it smacked me right across my cheek, and I felt warmth when it touched me. And it was like It got brighter as it got closer. Like when it was closer, it was like it was emitting light, as if, somebody threw like a light up bouncy ball at your face. Like I physically felt it touch my face. That was where I was like, okay, enough is enough. I'm fucking on the offensive now. And I would just immediately, spoke out, and I was like, that's enough. Like, that's too much. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. I don't know what you are. Really, frankly, where I am at this point, like, I have no fucking idea what's going on here. But this is too much. That's enough. This needs to be done now. I'm like, okay. And it's like, it's so funny because like when I think about this story and when I tell this story, I feel like it's very anticlimactic because I do that classic thing of like, well, then I laid down and went back to bed. No, like ghost identification thing. Really nothing else takes place at that moment. Like that was it. It was done. Just genuinely could not get a grip on what had just happened. But I was exhausted. It's like this took a lot of energy. So I laid back down and I went to sleep, and there were, really no further notable events in that moment. And I woke up in the morning, as you do, and I was just kind of like, was that real? Like, did that happen to me? Like what did I experience last night? Kid ghost fireball, cat adventure? Like what is this? What just happened? I just couldn't really shake it, I was just like, that was very odd. It was just very strange. At no point did I feel really genuinely threatened or terror. I've had other experiences that like really, really, really scared me. I did not feel true like fear, but I was really just very confused. I the best way I could sum it up is that I really, really felt like I was being messed with. It was more mischief than it was intimidation, if you will, So I wake up in the morning and, okay, that was kind of a lot. I don't really know what was going on here. So my buddy, he wakes up and he comes out from his room and he's like, hey man, how's it going? How'd you sleep? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm not really sure, dude. I don't even know that I even want to talk about it. I'm not sure. I was like, dude, I just kind of like, I had a weird night with your cat. And he's like, what do you mean? I just felt like I couldn't just tell him the story because I was like, really in pieces, all of these things are insane and really probably pretty easy to explain away. Every house in Florida's got central air conditioning, maybe the blinds were being manipulated by the air in the room, whatever. So I was like, I don't know. I'm not going to break this down for him play by play. So, I was just like, dude, I don't know, man. I was asleep and then I got woken up. And I don't know if I was woken up by the cat. I don't know, man. I saw a weird shadow. And he just kind of looked at me, and I'm looking him in his eyes, just trying to gauge. We've never talked about ghosts or experiences or anything of that nature. This isn't something we've had to broach, in the terms of our friendship. And he just kind of looks at me and he goes, fuck. Was it kid-sized? At that point, like it was just full goosebumps. Yeah, did it look like a kid? And I was like, yeah. It fucking did. And he's like, yeah, I don't know, man. I've seen it too. And that was it. That was all the conversation we had. Yeah, we really never talked about it more than that, which is also such a classic I had an experience I can't explain thing. And your buddy's just like, oh yeah, the ghost in the house? Yeah. It was a very wild experience.
I just have the usual question for Josh. Did he still believe in the paranormal to this day? And what the heck does he think it is? Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, certainly. Definitely the paranormal. I mean, I feel like, do you believe in the paranormal is an interesting question because I would have to ask somebody to truly define normal. I'm not willing to bet that I have a strong understanding of what the world really is and what the universe really is. And so, yes, I find everything strange all the time. So yeah, definitely believe in the paranormal for certain. What do I think it is? I have no idea. I would say, I say I've had 5 paranormal experiences in my life, but I will say that I have had many, many, many experiences of energy, of spirit, if you care to use that word. So there's no doubt in my mind that there is much more than we can perceive, and much more than we may ever be able to perceive. And so I have no idea what it is, and I am not one of those people who has an undying need to have the question answered, but I certainly am curious, and every opportunity I've ever had to experience it has been something that's eye-opening and helps me expand on what might be, and that's good enough for me.
As usual on Hey That's Weird, I accommodate a space for my storytellers to talk about something they're passionate about, whether it be a hobby, a charity, or their business. Here's what Joshua wanted to talk about.
So, I talked a lot about Maine in a very idyllic way, and I do, at my core, believe that Maine is an idyllic place. But as every other place can attest, Maine has its difficulties and its hardships, and over the last few years, particularly southern Maine has had a lot of difficulty with essentially rapid expansion and rapid growth and rapid gentrification of an area that's extremely beautiful but also extremely small. So along with that, you have problems of houselessness and systemic issues that sort of fall by the wayside in pursuit of expansion. So southern Maine has had a great issue with that recently, while simultaneously being a wonderful and a beautiful safe haven for many different immigrant backgrounds. And so we've got great programs and beautiful things, and I would say in the majority of the state of Maine and the majority of the people in the state of Maine have welcomed immigrants into our community with open arms, and they have enriched our community to an absolutely incredible extent. And without them, we are deeply lacking in so many ways, but especially in terms of food, right? And so with that, my plug would be for Maine Needs. And they are a southern Maine-based volunteer nonprofit outfit that provides essential items for folks who need them, and they do an incredible job of, Maine's cold, Maine's big winter, and so they do a good job of providing warm clothing. They do food. They'll help you find furniture. They are everything. They're a one-stop shop of people who love and care for their community and for their neighbors, and they deserve all the support in the world. And so it's very localized, but it's very important, and so Maine Needs is my plug.
And that does it for episode 19. A huge thanks to my new friend Joshua for sharing his story and being so fun to talk to. If you have a story of your own and you want to make an episode with me, then reach out. I can be found on Instagram at HeyThat'sWeirdPodcast, or via email at HeyThat'sWeirdPodcast@gmail.com. Also, there are no rules for how we record. We could meet on a video call, or you could just record your story for me, send it to me, and I'll work my magic. Okay, until next time, stay weird.